Hello, welcome to Digital Influence. Today I've got the pleasure of interviewing a good friend of mine, Wendy Pavey. So Wendy is the owner of Executive Brand. She's a personal brand strategist. She specializes in working with executives and helping them out with an emphasis on LinkedIn. And she's just recently launched a great product, which I've been the very lucky owner of, called the C-Suite Guide to LinkedIn. And I thought I'd get her on the show just to tell us all, whether we're executives or not, how to get the most out of LinkedIn, how to use it strategically to reach your career or business objectives. Welcome, Wendy.
Thank you, Dallas. Pleasure to be here.
Well, thanks so much for coming on. And I'll give it a very quick intro there, but perhaps you can tell us a little bit more about what you do and your background, because you mostly work with now, but in the past you've got a really interesting history working in branding and marketing for some really well-known firms, and has sort of made the transition into the social media world. So tell us a bit about what you do now and also your past and what made you make this change.
Yes, well, my business now is focused on senior corporate executives, and it's working with them to help them be best positioned for the roles that they want. And we do that by helping them create a differentiated personal brand, a visible digital profile, and a strong professional network. And yes, I do have an extensive history in brand development. I started out working with some iconic global brands, with companies like Apple and Nokia, Gatorade, Gillette. And that was incredibly valuable to see how a big global brand has to constantly present itself to the market. It's not surprising, really, that the biggest brands are the biggest advertisers. They just can't take for granted that consumers will want to keep buying their product. And I could really see the similarities with senior executives, especially once you get a certain level of seniority, that you still need to promote yourself. You still need to make sure that you are visible, that the right people know what you can do and how that can be valued for the company.
Fantastic. And how do executives respond to this idea? Because in a way that's part of what we're all dealing with now, that we're on a global marketplace and that our personal brand is important. Are they receptive initially? Do some of them get it and not others? What sort of response do you get?
I get a very strong response from anybody who realises that, yes, the global job marketplace has transformed dramatically. Anybody who's had any fears for their current role, or who had expectations that they would progress beyond their current role, but those expectations haven't been met. And if someone's been made redundant in the last 5 years or so, then they have experienced firsthand just how much the global marketplace has transformed. It's a scary world out there, and it can be really difficult if you don't have that visibility online and those connections with the right people. To try and get yourself back in can be extremely difficult.
Yes, I can imagine. And I can also imagine that in these really senior roles you're talking about, and I know you often work with sort of ASX 200 listed company executives, in those roles, it's not like it's going to be advertised on seek.com. It really is a word of mouth and traditionally the old boys network, but I guess increasingly word of mouth is online, and people are starting to see that you need to be impressing and making connections and building relationships long in advance, so that when that opportunity comes up, you're top of mind as the person for the role. Is that right?
That's absolutely right. The traditional networks, the traditional ways that you got jobs have transformed. It's so easy for companies now to find the person that they're looking for. Instead of advertising a role, and they might get 200 or 300 or 400 applicants for that role. It's an enormous amount of work to have to sift through all those applications. Instead, you could use sites like LinkedIn, which has a fantastic search capability, and they can actually find the person who's got exactly the right qualifications, exactly the right experience, contact them through LinkedIn and say, we're looking for this sort of person. Are you interested in a conversation? And that's how companies and that's how recruiters source their candidates nowadays. But beyond that, you're absolutely right. It's not just about when a role is advertised. It's about, are people thinking of you when they think about what their company needs for the future? And that's specifically what I'm working with my clients, is to make sure they are positioned in the minds of the people who are the decision makers at the companies that they'd like to work for, so that they're known to them. So they're not even embarking on that process of, oh, we need to find someone, but instead we've got this problem to solve and Dallas is the person that we know can solve it, so let's go and speak to him. And that is what 95% of my executive clients are looking for. They want that tap on the shoulder, they want that phone call or that email from the chair of the board, from a CEO saying, we need someone with your skills, come and have a chat to us. That's what we're looking for.
Fantastic. And I'm sure that it's not just at the time of when they decide they're looking for someone. Really, you need lots of small experiences. So, for example, you might be asked to be on a small committee, or to speak at an event, or be consulted on something, or perhaps just to liaise with someone as part of a deal. And there might be 4 or 5 small events like that before someone thinks, gee, that person would be fantastic for this new role. So in all our marketing touch points are essential, and job seeking and career building is no different.
That's absolutely right. And as I said, this is what I learned from working with these big brands and seeing how hard they work to be in front of their consumers day in, day out. And it's a very similar process where you can't just expect the first time that you contact someone that they're going to turn around and offer you a C-suite role in their company. You are going to need to become known to people, and then you're going to have to demonstrate your expertise and showcase what you can do. And that could be in a variety of ways, but it is going to be multiple touch points before you're in a position where people say, Dallas, he does this. Okay, he's the person we want. Let's make that phone call.
Fantastic. And of course, LinkedIn offers a whole variety of online touch points as well before it even comes to direct engagement. So tell us some of the ways that you'd use the LinkedIn platform to help an executive to raise their profile and be seen, day in, day out, so they really are top of mind to their ideal potential employers or partners. Tell us more, Wendy.
Well, presence on LinkedIn does begin with your profile, and you do need to have a really strong profile that is search optimized. But that's a passive strategy. That's just the first step. You then need to become involved in groups. You need to be participating in conversations. You need to be expanding your network so that you're connected to people who work for the companies that you would like to work for, or who are part of the industry that you are part of, and making sure that you are known to people. So there's a proactive outreach program. One of the best and most powerful things you can do is to be blogging on LinkedIn, to be using this amazing pulse platform that LinkedIn has to showcase your expertise. And it sounds daunting if you haven't done it, but once you start doing it and you start to see the engagement that you're getting, it has tremendous power. And I have, wonderful anecdotes about clients with just a small amount of content have gotten themselves right in front of the very person who's been in a position to have that important conversation.
Yeah, so it really does lend itself toward you position yourself exactly how you want, using LinkedIn Publisher to publish articles to demonstrate the expertise in the space you want. And then if people are engaging with that, or if you share it into groups, then you're getting that sort of direct one-on-one engagement, and people are seeing you as an expert at what you're talking about, especially if that's backed up by your profile.
That's absolutely right. And that's why your profile is important. But as I said, that's passive. It's like having a really well-written resume, but if nobody is seeing that resume, it's not serving you in any way. And you do have to expect that it will be a long game. While I have had experiences where, as I said, clients have just made small efforts and it has paid off for them very, very quickly, more typically, you should expect to be investing probably 6 months, maybe 12 months in building those relationships so that when the opportunity arises, you are the person who's top of mind.
Yeah, I'll definitely echo that all this social media and online marketing is a long-term game, and it's great in that it takes time to get results, but then the input, the effort you put in often has residual effect for years to come. And I know that there's been times I've been slogging away at LinkedIn and thinking, is this worthwhile? But now, I've got an amazing profile and I get a lot of inquiries coming from that. So it is a case of investing now and keep adding to that until you've got a real asset there that keeps bringing you value for years to come.
That's absolutely right. And I say over and over to my clients that your professional network is the best career asset you'll ever have. And as you invest in it, it keeps growing and it becomes more and more valuable to you. Younger people today have got such an advantage that they're able to use platforms like LinkedIn to build their professional network right from school days or university days and on through every role they've had. Whereas if you're starting from now, you've got to spend that effort to go backwards and look for people, which is time consuming. But that doesn't mean that we don't need to put that effort in to make sure that you are connected to the people that you worked with 25 years ago, that you were on a project with 10 years ago, because you don't know where people are now. You don't know how you might be able to help them, and you don't know how they might be able to help you.
That's fantastic advice. I imagine it's a scary world for someone who has potentially been not involved with technology and not involved with even simple things like sending emails. A lot of these really high-end executives are going to have personal assistants and not necessarily even managing their own calendar. So the idea of spending a lot of time in this new platform that has different social rules and there's all these little tech headaches that can slow us down. It must be really hard if you're 60 and suddenly have a redundancy and need to get back into the market because the world's just changed so much.
It has changed a lot, but many of my clients do in fact have an executive assistant or a virtual assistant that does a lot of the donkey work that's connected to, for example, building a profile on LinkedIn. And that's something that I often work with clients, is to say, let's create policies so that your assistant does know who to connect with, or they can actually implement an outreach program for you. I have clients who are, busy running multi-million-dollar or pound companies. I'm not going to be expecting them to be, writing their own, blogs or to be sending their own outreach requests. That's just not the best use of their time. But you can outsource the vast majority of those sorts of tasks. And as long as you're directing it, then you can accrue all the benefits without necessarily having to get bogged down in some of the technical issues.
And for most of us, doing it yourself is within reach, but it's often good to get help. For example, just having an editor with your publisher posts so that you've got that extra level of quality, because there's an opportunity to get in front of people, but they are judging you as well. So you've got to put your best foot forward. So I know that's something you often work with clients, is helping with the writing, but often just the editing process, so they've really got that polished product rather than something that's full of errors or grammar mistakes.
Well, absolutely, because that would be the wrong kind of brand building if the articles that you're submitting or the comments that you're making in group discussions are not informed comments, or they're badly spelled. Then that just damages your brand as opposed to builds it. But absolutely, it is important that when you develop content, as I said, that you need to initiate it to maintain the integrity of content. It needs to be based on the individual skills and experiences, but then always proofread, professionally edited if those resources are available to you, with images as part of the post, properly tagged and posted into the right groups, so that that effort that is going in is actually going to pay dividends. Because, as you rightly say, nothing's worse than something shoddy. It has the opposite effect to one we're striving for.
Tell us a little bit more about your clients and what the special challenges are that they face, and also how you get in touch with them, how they come to you, and just the considerations that you need to have about working with them.
Well, let me give you an example of a typical client, and because my work with clients is confidential, I have disguised some of the identifying details here, but let's call him John. He was someone who was in his middle 50s and had been given a redundancy after some 27 years of service with this company. The challenge that he found was that he was in the change management space, so it was something that was seen by his company as a nice to have, as opposed to a need to have when they were going through difficult times. And the challenge for John was that he needed to get in front of other companies, but like so many senior people, his network was extremely limited. He just didn't have contacts outside of the company where he'd worked for the best part of 3 decades. So the first task for him was to really come up with that. What's my point of difference? How can I tell a compelling story about myself so that people think, oh, well, we'd be interested in speaking to him? And that has to flow across all your materials, like your resume, your CV, your LinkedIn profile. And you also need to be able to communicate that in a compelling way in person, because all those things need to tell the same story. Then for John, it was really a matter of building that digital profile. He has a very common name in his own company. There were 2 others with the identical name, so we had to look at ways to differentiate him, but also to make sure that if you searched for his name, you found him. And that was a process of search optimizing his LinkedIn profile and making sure that he was producing other content as well, where he told the story about the value of what he does in an area which was sometimes seen as not being essential to the success of the organisation. John came to me because he had accepted the redundancy and he had a window of opportunity. He had about 12 months before he was going to start to feel the pinch of no longer being in work. So that process for him, it was very daunting. He hadn't done a job application. He hadn't even done a formal resume since the late 80s. And that was very challenging for him. But there's a mindset process as well, where you need to develop an appreciation of the skills and the strengths that you do have, because the process of being made redundant can really undermine how you feel about yourself and your ability in the marketplace. It's a real blow, and especially for older people, when you've thought you had an expectation of continuing in employment, it can really set you back. The thing that I really want to stress there is the importance of everyone just taking a moment to say, if I lost this job, what would I do? Who's around me who can help me, that I would be able to contact to say, I'm in this situation, I need some advice and I need some assistance. It's really valuable not to be scaring yourself, but just to take that objective look at, well, what do I have in the way of LinkedIn profile? What do I have in the way of professional network? Who do I know who can help me? So much can change. And another client I had, they were in an industry that was contracting. They knew this, they could see what was going to happen, and they were hoping that they would be bought out by one of their competitors who was in another country. To their delight, that was exactly what happened. However, all the local management was made redundant and operations are now run remotely from outside the country. which was not an outcome they were expecting at all. So here's someone who's in an industry that's dramatically contracted, and the place where they thought they would see out the rest of their working life, it was just no longer an option. When you find yourself in that position, it's very, very challenging, and it's just so much easier if you have already put measures in place to make sure you are connected to people, and that it's not just I'm connected to them on LinkedIn, but you're actually building a relationship with them. That's just fundamental.
And it's interesting in a way that the people who you'd think would be most safe are actually the ones most vulnerable, in that the more comfortable you are, the more you are settled into your job, or somewhere you've been 20 years, or perhaps you're even a freelancer or work alone, and everything's great. But the more safe you are, the less you tend to be doing that outreach and building your network. So the shock of that sudden change hits you much harder than someone who might have gone through 4 or 5 job transitions in the last 10 years. Their CV's fresh. They've kind of learnt what happens when you lose your job or change your role or go for a new one. Whereas people in secure employment, it's a little bit like someone who's been married since they were 16 and suddenly finds themselves single at 40 and don't know how to date. It's quite a similar situation.
But that's a great analogy, actually. It can happen out of the blue. You can have a merger, you can have an international acquisition. Things change, and I cannot tell you the number of times I've had executives sitting across from me, and the first 15 minutes of our conversation is just that, bewilderment and disbelief that they found themselves in this situation. And it can be really hard when you've been in a senior executive role, because it can often be difficult to move into other roles that are seen as less senior. People don't want someone who's been the CEO to then be coming in at a sales manager level, for example. So if that's the situation you're in, you need to be really clear on telling a story that allows people to understand how this has come about, and to feel that sense of confidence that, you're not going to be a threat to the incumbent CEO, but rather you're bringing a wonderful experience to what might be seen as a less senior role.
So it really is the classic overqualified situation too, particularly for some of those both older and senior people who've probably come from a very attractive salary and lots of bonuses. I'm sure a lot of them would be making several $100,000 a year. So it's hard to find many jobs at all like that. But even going for lower ones, you would look overqualified to almost anyone. And work's not just about money, is it? Often these people are looking for somewhere where they can contribute, and it's not necessarily about the dollars so much as being able to use their skills and make a difference somewhere. I know some people you've worked with are looking at finishing their career but wondering, well, where do I go from here? Tell us more about that situation and the sort of roles that are available for people who've had that corporate experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I certainly do have a number of clients who have finished their executive career, but as you say, they have got decades of experience that they want to share. So they might be looking for roles with non-profit organisations. They might be looking for a non-executive director role on the board of an organisation. But that itself is not something that's automatic. A lot of people are looking to make their career one where they hold a portfolio of those sorts of board appointments and other roles. So it's actually extremely competitive. And again, it's all about being known to the right people and being seen as someone who can contribute. So that those sorts of appointments, it tends to be the chair of the board who would have someone brought to their attention as, well, we've got a vacancy coming up. And they use their network. They overwhelmingly, they use their network. If they're looking for someone with very specific skills, then they might go and use an executive recruiter, and that role could well be advertised. But I think the statistics are something like 90% of roles are not advertised. You know, recruiters refer to it as the hidden job market. And it is all about being visible, being known to the right people, so that you get the opportunity to be considered. Because if you're invisible, then you'll never be considered for those roles.
For sure. And once you are on their radar, of course, they're going to go and check you out online. And LinkedIn is almost certainly going to be the first thing that comes up for a name search for most people. And so that profile, again, becomes the central point they're going to refer to decide, is this the right person, or, you know, perhaps we should look elsewhere. So having your message out there, perhaps you can tell us a bit more about what you do to a profile. What are some of the considerations that you use to help tell their story and sort of sell them as the ideal candidate for a role?
Well, the starting point is always to be absolutely crystal clear on what your objective is, because everything that's in the profile needs to support that objective. So whether you are, you know, presenting yourself for a C-suite role with a particular company, or whether you're looking for a non-executive director role on the board of a particular company, everything in your profile needs to support that objective. People often say to me, "Oh, I don't know what to put in my profile." Well, that clues me in that they actually don't know what it is they want to use their LinkedIn profile for. Because when you know what you're trying to achieve, then you know who you're talking to. So your objective dictates your audience. And then as soon as you're clear on who the audience is, you know what the message is, because it's what you would tell someone if you were sitting across from them and they were saying, "Well, tell me why we should consider you for this role, Dallas." And you say, "Well, I've got experience in this, and I've got skills here, and I've done something similar there." And what you put in your profile positions you for that role. So that's always the starting point. For executives, it is just critical that they are presented as a senior executive, as someone who has a track record of success. You must have a quality photograph. It is just not optional. Someone with a snapshot, someone with no photograph, that's not congruent with somebody who's seen as integral to the success of the company that they currently work for, because those people are an asset to the company. So of course they have a professional photograph, and of course they are presented well. If you don't have that, then there's an immediate disconnect. People look at your profile and you're saying, "I'm looking for a C-suite role," but the way you look doesn't support that. If you've only got 50 connections on LinkedIn and you're not participating in groups, you're not appearing as somebody who is a successful senior executive. LinkedIn is an amazing platform to connect with people all over the world. It amazes me how narrow people's connections are. I have actually developed a tool for people to use to map their network. And LinkedIn is the perfect opportunity for you to say, "I need to know more people who are in this industry," or "I need to be better connected to this allied profession." And then you can use the search function to find those people and to start a conversation, to start building that relationship. And you can do that at your own time, at your own pace. And you can do almost all of that for free using the free basic account on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. And so with the paid accounts on LinkedIn, I know a lot of people have this question, is that something we generally need as an everyday user, or if we're looking for a job? Are there certain times when we should start thinking about getting a paid account, or is the free account good for most people?
I think the free account is adequate for most people. What it gives you in the instance, if you are looking for a job and you buy the Job Seeker Premium account, then if you've applied to jobs through LinkedIn, then it will boost your profile so that you're more visible if recruiters or company HRs are scrolling through search results. That's a passive strategy though, and as I've already said, I'm not a fan of sitting back and waiting for the job that you want to be advertised. You need to be proactively putting yourself in front of those people, and not just by paying to boost your profile, but to have people notice you because you've written a series of articles about your area of expertise in which you talk about the value of your expertise to your previous employers. That's the kind of thing that is so much more successful. And in terms of engagement, they say that recruiters might only spend 7 or 12 seconds looking at a profile. I work every day with executive recruiters, and I know at a glance, they will rule someone out. That has a lot to do with their photographs and the completeness of their profile. So those elements are fundamentally important to make sure that you're ticking off.
And LinkedIn does have a sort of how to do it function too, to advise you of areas of data and complete people and have the nice profile photo. With people, it's the importance of the strategy. So you don't come in and just, like, if I want my profile spruced up, you don't really do that, do you? It's that's not enough scope to make it worthwhile. Without that big picture, you can't actually know what you're aiming for. So trying to improve someone's profile is a bit of a waste of time.
Look, it is. It's window dressing, really. It's making something, look more complete, but it's not actually serving the purpose. And I find that, again, that's one of those passive strategies that have very, very little success. And the more challenging your objectives are, so if you are someone who is striving for a senior executive role, but perhaps you're not currently in one, or you need to make that jump up to the C-suite, the more of those challenges that you have, the more you need to be proactive and making sure that you are taking those positive actions. And if you're looking for work, you need to be doing that on just about a daily basis, that you're connecting with new people, that you are developing content, that you're sharing that content, that you're actually in conversations with the people that you're connected to. I mean, for me, LinkedIn is never about reaching a magic number of connections. It's about having quality connections. And this is part of the strategy as well, that we're looking at, well, who do you need to be connected with? I mean, there's might be no value in just, all sorts of people will try and connect with you on LinkedIn. You need to actually assess them to see, is there potential here for mutual value? And I'm stressing the mutual. It's not just about you saying, well, I want to be connected to you because you work for a company I'd like to work for, and maybe you can give me some inside information. It's about, how can you be of value to your connections? Is there knowledge you have that you can share? Can you help them by liking or commenting on their articles? Can you work together to write an article that combines your experience? Always be looking for how you can add value. So the old, you look to give before you ask to receive.
Fantastic. Now, it sounds to me like if someone needs help, then they'd need to work with you one-on-one to get the most benefit. But you've recently released a kit or a toolkit designed to help people work on their own profile. And one of the interesting things in it is a tool to help people assess how they should use LinkedIn. So I imagine a lot of your clients think, oh, look, I'm too busy for this. Prove to me it's worthwhile. Tell us a bit more about this tool, because I think it's a great way for people to gauge what level of involvement they should aim for on LinkedIn.
Absolutely. Well, this tool, which is to assess the value of LinkedIn for an individual, came out because so many times senior executives would say to me, do I really need to be on LinkedIn? I mean, not one of my clients has ever asked me how they could spend more time on social media, quite the opposite. It's that they're short of time. They only want to invest the bare minimum that they need in order to get the results that they want. So for those people, I developed this tool so it helps you start again with your objectives. So you've got a clear strategy, and then to look at who are the people who are the key decision makers, the key influencers as part of your objectives, and to literally plot it out to say, these important people, how active are they on LinkedIn? Because you could be generating all this content, you could be making slide shares and commenting on groups. If the people you need to get in front of are not going to be able to see that, then I don't want you spending any more than the bare minimum time on LinkedIn. So you use the tool and it will give you an assessment, an objective assessment. Do you just need a minimum presence, so one that presents you effectively as a senior executive but doesn't take up any more of your time? Or are the people that you want to be in front of active on LinkedIn? Are they people who have got strong networks? You can see that they belong to groups and they've got more than 500 connections, that they're following people, that you can see that they're getting endorsements for their skills. Those are the people who are going to see what you put out there, and you'll be able to use LinkedIn as a platform to connect directly with them so that you can be having those direct conversations with people who have got the potential to be critically important to help you achieve your career objectives. So
Fantastic.
it's a simple tool. Sorry.
What else is in your LinkedIn toolkit, Wendy? Can you tell us a bit more about it?
Sure. So in addition to the value assessment tool, there's also that network mapping tool that I talked about before. So this is a way for people to visually represent the strength of their network. I often do this when I am doing workshops for executive cohorts for companies or organisations. And generally speaking, people are concerned by the results they get. They realise that their connections they're warm connections. By that I mean somebody that you could ask for their advice or assistance in achieving your career objective. But those people tend to be few in number and concentrated in certain areas. For example, they're probably people that you've worked with previously, as opposed to maybe what you need is to be in front of the C-suite of the company that you want to work for. You're not going to be connected with those people at all. And it measures the warmth of the relationship as well, because just being connected to somebody is effectively meaningless. You need to be turning that connection into a relationship so that they become, and this won't happen overnight, but they become the sort of person where you can say, Dallas, I need your assistance. I'm being made redundant from this role, or things are changing here and I can see that I'm going to need to reposition myself in order to get another job. Can you help me? Can you give me your advice? Now, you're not going to do that with someone that you just happen to be connected with on LinkedIn. But if we've had that conversation and you know me and you understand the value that I can bring, then you're much more likely to help me. So those two tools are really important parts of the kit. Then there's a guide which takes you through what you need to have in your LinkedIn profile. If all you need is what I call the minimum presence, which means that the people that are going to be important for your achieving your career objective are not really active on LinkedIn, then I step you through sort of 5 areas of a LinkedIn profile that I want you to tick off, and then some minimum activity, and that's all you need to do. If you need what I call an optimum presence, then again, I'm going to step you through each element of the LinkedIn profile and say, do this, don't do that. It has lots of screenshots, step-by-step instructions, so you can, it's very easy to implement. And if you do have an assistant who's going to manage your LinkedIn profile for you, then I've also got templates for activity on LinkedIn, a template for connections policy, so you can say to your assistant, I will only connect with these sorts of people, and then that person can just tick through the list and decide. They'll make the same decision that you would make about whether or not to accept a connection request. And there's lots of how-to guides in there as well. So common things like if you're getting spammed with a lot of rubbishy connection requests, and some of my very senior executive clients, they hold high-profile positions with high-profile companies, and they get a constant stream of connection requests. If that's a problem, though, it's easy to add the need to know your email address into a connection request, and that will stop 98% of those spammy requests. So again, there's a how-to sheet step by step with screenshots, so you know exactly how to do that.
Fantastic. So that sounds like it'd be great for a professional who takes their career seriously, and also people who have a virtual assistant or executive assistant to help out. It lets them outsource their LinkedIn in a really efficient way, doesn't it? Because I know I've done tons of outsourcing over the years, and being well set up for outsourcing can give you much better results and also save you a heap of time and money. Otherwise, it can be a bit of a headache. So that sounds super valuable. Tell me, Wendy, if people want to work with you directly, how would they get in touch? And I'd also I'll ask you later about how we can find more about the LinkedIn toolkit.
Well, you can contact me via my website, which is executivebrand.com.au. There's a contact form there. I do often work with clients one-on-one, but for those who don't have the time or the resources for a one-on-one consulting, then I have the guide. I have an e-course which will take you through the process of developing those three career assets that I mentioned before, which is the differentiated personal brand, the visible digital profile, and a strong professional network. And that will walk you through the exact same process that I go through one-on-one with my clients, but it's self-paced. You can do it at the time that suits you. It's a very convenient delivery that a lot of people prefer.
Fantastic. And how can we find the toolkit? Is it on your website or on a specific link?
You'll certainly find it on the website. So again, executivebrand.com.au. For people who are watching this webinar, you buy the toolkit, then let me know, send me an email or contact me through the contact form, and I will include a free profile review. So I'll take a look at your LinkedIn profile and come back to you with some initial suggestions for changes and improvements that you can make. So that's a bonus offer if you purchase the toolkit after watching this webinar.
Fantastic. So I'll make sure I've got those links below the recording on digital influence. And look, there may be a time frame on that. So if you're watching this years later, then I can't be certain it will still be available. But if it's listed there, then click through and get that free bonus. And I should add, the LinkedIn toolkit is under $100, so very affordable for anyone, not just for CEOs of BHP, etc. Well, thanks, Wendy. That's been really fantastic. And do you have any sort of super tips for LinkedIn that we can implement straight away? What words of wisdom can you share from your experience?
I think the most important immediate change that people can make is in their headline, which is the space where you might say what your current role is. In that, get in your value proposition. I mean, that's a core element of your personal brand, but essentially it's what you do that is of value. If you can get some words in about that, you will transform people's perception of you. There's 120 characters in that field. It's not a lot, but it's more than enough to let people know what it is that you do that's of value. And it will, as I say, just make the biggest difference to what people know about you. And it's you telling people. LinkedIn is not for me about sitting back passively and hoping that a recruiter somewhere will come across your profile and think, oh, you look like a good person to be considered for this role. It's about using it intelligently and proactively, to connect with people who you can build a mutually beneficial relationship with, to showcase your knowledge and your expertise in this amazing global publishing platform. It's about participating in your professional community, or being an integral part of your industry, and the opportunities that can realise for you. With my own clients, I've seen people who have been offered a speaking gig at their industry conference, who've been interviewed for a podcast, who have been asked to contribute to a serious academic piece of work, all because they took these simple steps at no cost to them, and a relatively small amount of effort compared to the huge dividends that they received in return.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again so much, Wendy, and we'll have those links below the interview on digital influence. So anyone who's listening on a podcast or a YouTube recording, then just follow the links there to download a link to Wendy's C-Suite guide. And thanks for everyone for listening. Look forward to sharing more about how you can grow your digital influence. Thanks very much. Goodbye, Wendy.
Bye.